A website glitch, just 47 minutes long, accidentally ripped open a reality they were never supposed to see, and what spilled out wasn't just inventory, it was a hidden collapse nobody was meant to notice.
Breaking today, the implosion of the Sussexes. Meghan Markle's Archewell charity scam and as ever lies have finally been exposed. An astonishing double blow.
I'm firstly grateful to them because they pushed the book up to #1 on Amazon. And secondly, I'm not surprised. I mean, for them, any criticism is always poisonous and damaging, and particularly from me. But I can assure you it's very well sourced. And it's true. I mean, that's the point. It is actually, unfortunately, true at the time.
We didn't plan for everything selling out in under an hour. And so watching those metrics happen in real time, it's already sold out. Because I'm business-minded, I'm immediately going, okay, well...
How good. How embarrassing.
For years, the image looked polished, controlled, almost untouchable. Carefully curated appearances, carefully chosen words, carefully staged narratives. But then suddenly, one careless digital slip exposed something raw, something messy, something quietly unraveling behind the scenes. Over $10 million worth of unsold products just sitting there, not moving, not disappearing, not secretly sold out like the story suggested, just sitting. And that silence, it screams louder than any headline ever could. Because this wasn't just about jam jars and candles. No, this was the final snapshot of something much bigger. A slow motion breakdown that had been building for years, piece by piece, deal by deal, promise by promise. And if you rewind the timeline, you start to notice something unsettling. A pattern, not random, not unlucky, predictable. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. Before the wedding, before the titles, before the fairy tale narrative locked itself into global memory, there was already a warning. Quiet, internal, almost dismissed. A voice from inside the palace reportedly flagged concerns, not about image, but about long-term sustainability, about fit, about direction. And somehow that warning faded into the background like it didn't matter. But what if that was the first crack? Because everything that followed feels like an echo of that exact moment. Fast forward and suddenly the numbers begin to tell a story no PR statement can smooth over. Revenues that don't match expectations. Expenses that quietly spiral upward. A financial structure that looks strong on the surface, but underneath, hollow. One donor carrying almost the entire weight. One source propping up the illusion of wide support. And when you strip that away, what's left? A question nobody wants to answer.
Everything she touches turns to shit. And I think every sort of creative person behind her or deep pocket behind her knows it's an extraordinary risk. She's too toxic.
I don't think anybody at Netflix could have seen the show before it went out, because it's not entertainment. It's not edifying in any way. It's really, really bizarre.
What's the title of her show? Love Meghan. For what? To watch? Who wants to watch Meghan Markle bake a pie?
Because when documents start speaking louder than narratives, things get dangerous. Names are named, records are cited, observations are made not from rumors, but from what's sitting right there in public view. And instead of shutting the story down, the backlash fuels it. Pushback becomes promotion. Denial becomes attention. And suddenly, the very attempt to silence the conversation turns it into something unstoppable. That's the irony. The louder the denial, the louder the curiosity becomes. And then comes the number that hits like a punch. A multi-million-dollar deficit. Not speculation, not gossip, actual filings, real figures. And buried inside those numbers, a deeper discomfort. Nearly half the spending categorized under vague, almost evasive labels. Other, consultants, strategic support. Words that sound professional but explain nothing. And when transparency fades, suspicion fills the gap instantly.
I watched the Harry and Meghan Netflix documentary. Now, I'll be honest with you, before I watched it, I was not a fan of theirs. But now I've actually heard their side of the story, I fucking hate.
I'm opening this cylinder now. If you're watching, what a ta-da!
Last year, I had thought, you know what, American Riviera, that sounds like such a great name. It's my neighborhood, it's a nickname for Santa Barbara, but it limited me to things that were just manufactured and grown in this area. And I've been waiting for a moment to share a name that I had secured in 2022. And this is the moment. And it's called As Ever.
This relaunch has now descended into a farce, it would seem, because officials in the Spanish town of Mallorca have accused the Duchess of Sussex of copying its traditional coat of arms for the logo of her newly revamped
Well, it's pretty close, isn't it?
luxury brand. It does look very, very close.
3 audit requests, no answers, no clarification, just silence. And that kind of silence doesn't feel accidental. It feels deliberate, like something is being avoided rather than overlooked. And here's where the story twists again. Because while the financial side starts raising eyebrows, the lifestyle narrative continues to sell perfection, luxury branding, handcrafted imagery, the illusion of authenticity. But behind that image, something doesn't quite align. Suppliers revealed, branding inconsistencies exposed, and suddenly the story starts to feel less like a curated vision and more like a carefully constructed illusion. And illusions don't collapse all at once. They crack quietly first.
But I actually think she was love-bombing him, completely love-bombing him, playing along with all their plans at the time, saying, of course I want to live in South Africa, because he really wants to live in South Africa at the time. She was playing along with that.
This woman is looking for a husband. The problem is that Meghan Markle is ugly. Meghan Markle is ugly, old, looks old. Never mind the age. She looks old. She's smelly. She's unpleasant. No smart billionaire is going to marry this woman or have anything to do with her without having a prenup.
That's only going to work, Harry, once you kick Meghan to the curb and blow the whistle on her terrible behavior.
A charity being told to stop asking for donations, executive salaries skyrocketing while deficits deepen, contractors pulling in six figures under vague descriptions. And the question grows louder with every detail: where is the money actually going? Because when the surface looks polished but the foundation looks unstable, people start connecting dots. And once those dots connect, the narrative becomes impossible to control. And yet, this still isn't where the real shift happens, because everything up to this point, it's just the build-up. The real turning point comes when the biggest deal of all starts to crack. The one that was supposed to change everything. The one that looked like a power move. The one that sold the world a dream. And what happens when that dream doesn't deliver? A headline worth $100 million shrinking into a reality far less impressive. Projects announced but never materializing. Ideas promised but never executed. And slowly, quietly, expectations begin to drop. Rankings fall. Visibility fades. And what once looked like dominance starts looking like absence. And here's the chilling part. Inside the industry, the tone changes first. Not publicly, not loudly, just behind the scenes. Conversations shift. Access tightens. Distance grows. And then one day, without drama, without explanation, the door simply closes. No explosion. No scandal. Just done. And when you step back and look at the pattern, Spotify, Netflix, the charity, the brand, it starts to feel less like isolated incidents and more like a repeated cycle. Launch big, promise bigger, deliver less, move on, again and again and again. So now the question isn't what happened. The question is, why does the same story keep repeating? And more importantly, how long can that cycle continue before something finally breaks in a way that can't be controlled anymore? Because if this is just part one of what's been quietly unfolding, then what comes next might be impossible to ignore. And just when it feels like the story has already exposed everything, it pulls you deeper into a layer that feels even more uncomfortable, even more personal, and far more revealing than numbers, deals, or headlines ever could be. Because behind every collapsing deal, behind every financial discrepancy, behind every brand that rises and quietly fades, there's always one thing holding it all together: perception. And when perception starts to crack, everything else follows. This is where the pattern stops looking like coincidence and starts looking like a system. Spotify was supposed to be the beginning, a massive $25 million deal, a platform ready to amplify influence, voice, identity. But what actually came out of it? One podcast, 12 episodes, and then nothing. Silence, no expansion, no follow-up, no evolution, just a quiet end that didn't match the size of the promise. And when insiders finally spoke out, it wasn't subtle. The word grifters didn't just sting, it echoed loudly, publicly. And once that label enters the conversation, it doesn't leave easily. Now take that pattern and place it next to what happened next. Netflix. Bigger stage, bigger expectations, bigger headlines, but the outcome? Almost identical. Massive anticipation, minimal delivery. One documentary that sparked attention, and then a long stretch of projects stuck in development, quietly disappearing from relevance. And when the deal shifted from exclusive to first look, it didn't feel like growth. It felt like retreat, a downgrade disguised as opportunity. And then something even stranger happens: the silence. Because when a company is proud of a partnership, they talk about it, they promote it, they highlight it. But when questions are asked and the answer is no comment, that's when the absence of words becomes the loudest statement of all. Inside, the mood had already shifted, expectations lowered, interest cooled, and behind closed doors, the message reportedly became painfully simple. They were done. But this isn't just about deals collapsing, it's about something deeper, something harder to rebuild once it starts slipping: credibility. Because while media partnerships were quietly weakening, something else was happening in a space that was supposed to be untouchable. Charity, the one place where image and intention are supposed to align. And yet, even there, tension began to surface. Centerball, a cause rooted in purpose, history, and real impact. A foundation that once stood as a symbol of commitment, but then internal strain begins to show. Brand analysis revealing uncomfortable truths. Donors stepping back. Support shrinking. Not because the mission changed, but because perception did. That's the part nobody wants to admit. Because when donors say they care more about the mission than the media noise surrounding it, that's not just feedback. That's a warning. A clear signal that something external is overshadowing something essential. And when leadership tensions start rising, when structural resets begin happening quietly behind the scenes, it's no longer just about image. It's about stability. And here's where the emotional center of the story shifts. Because this isn't just about business decisions anymore. This is about identity. A royal identity that once came with structure, expectation, responsibility, now operating in a completely different world where visibility replaces duty. And influence is measured in clicks instead of credibility. And that transition, it wasn't smooth. It wasn't seamless. It created friction. And that friction is now visible in every corner of the narrative. Because the truth is, stepping away from a system doesn't just free you, it also removes the safety net that system provided. And once that net is gone, every decision carries weight it didn't before. Every failure becomes louder. Every misstep becomes clearer. Every unanswered question becomes harder to ignore. And then comes the financial pressure. Because no matter how powerful the image is, numbers don't lie. A 14.65 million home now valued at nearly double sounds impressive until you factor in what it costs to maintain that life. Security alone costing millions every year. Staff, travel, operations. A burn rate that doesn't slow down just because income streams start shrinking. And that's where things get tight. Because while expenses remain constant, income starts to fluctuate. Spotify gone, Netflix scaled back, charity struggling, brand rebuilding after setbacks, speaking engagements and corporate roles filling the gaps but not replacing the scale that was once expected. And when that imbalance grows, the pressure builds quietly at first, then steadily, then all at once. And hovering above all of this is something even more unpredictable: the future of the titles themselves. Because what happens when the one thing anchoring the entire brand, identity, recognition, royal connection, starts to shift? Precedents have already been set. Decisions have already been made within the institution. And discussions about redefining roles, redefining positions, redefining status are no longer hypothetical. They're real. And if that anchor changes, everything built on top of it becomes unstable overnight. Because take away the titles, and what remains? That's the question no one is answering directly. And maybe that's intentional. Because as long as the focus stays on headlines, controversies, and surface-level drama, the deeper issue stays hidden. Financial sustainability, long-term viability, brand endurance, the ability to maintain a lifestyle, an image, an empire without the consistent backing that once made it possible. And this is where the story circles back to the beginning. That one glitch, those 47 minutes. Because it wasn't just a mistake, it was a glimpse, a brief accidental window into something that was never meant to be public, a snapshot of reality breaking through narrative. And once you've seen that, once you've connected the dots between inventory, finances, partnerships, and patterns, it becomes impossible to unsee. Because now every move feels different, every announcement feels calculated, every silence feels deliberate, and every new venture raises the same question before it even begins. Is this another beginning or just another repetition? Because the pattern hasn't broken. Not yet. And until it does, this story isn't over. Not even close.